The Starry Night. If you think Van Gogh painted this as a celebration of the night sky, you're wrong. He painted it from inside a locked psychiatric asylum, from memory, because he was not permitted outside after dark. The cypress tree on the left is a traditional European cemetery symbol. It appears in graveyards across France and the Netherlands. Van Gogh was aware of this. In a letter to Theo, written during his stay at Saint-Paul-de-Moselle, he described his relationship to the night sky in terms that have nothing to do with beauty. Why, I say to myself, should the spots of light in the firmament be less accessible to us than the black spots on the map of France? Just as we take the train to go to Tarascon or Rouen, we take death to go to a star. He was not speaking poetically. He was describing death as a mode of transport. The painting was completed in June 1889. Van Gogh mentioned it to Theo only twice in his letters, once to report he had painted a starry sky, and once in September 1889 when he included it in a list of works he considered failures. He called the group as a whole not particularly good. Theo stored it. It was never exhibited during Van Gogh's lifetime. He died 13 months after painting it. A Sunday on La Grande Jatte. Seurat spent 2 years on this painting, over 4 meters wide, 48 individual figures, more than 60 preparatory sketches. If you think it's a warm portrait of Parisian leisure, look again. Not a single pair of figures makes eye contact. Not one. Everyone is completely isolated from everyone else. A couple stands side by side without touching or looking at each other. Children stand perfectly still, expressionless, facing away from their parents. A soldier stares into the middle distance. Art historians have called it one of the most precise documents of modern alienation ever painted. Seurat wasn't celebrating his city, he was dissecting it like a biologist. He was 25 years old when he started it. In the lower right corner, a woman walks a small monkey on a leash. In 19th century French visual culture, a monkey on a leash was a widely understood symbol for promiscuity and moral looseness. Seurat placed it next to a woman in fashionable dress in a family leisure scene in the most prominent position in the lower third of the canvas. Not one reviewer at the 1886 Paris Salon mentioned it. The painting hung there for weeks. Everyone saw it. Nobody said anything. The persistence of memory. Dalí was deliberate about almost everything he painted, and this one is no exception. If you think the melting watches are random surrealist imagery, you're wrong. Dalí stated in multiple interviews that the painting is a precise psychological self-portrait and that the melting clocks represent the experience of time during sexual impotence, the sensation of time becoming formless, unstructured, and unusable. The fleshy, distorted figure melting across the center of the canvas is his own face, seen in profile from above. He confirmed this in 1962. The landscape behind it is the coastline near his home in Cadaqués, Catalonia. Not imagined, a real place he could see from his studio window. He painted the entire canvas in approximately 2 hours one afternoon while Gala, his wife, was at the cinema. When she returned, he asked her to look at it and tell him if, once she had seen it, she would ever be able to forget it. She said no. He said that was exactly the intention. The painting is 24 by 33 centimeters, smaller than a piece of A4 paper. Every reproduction you have ever seen of it is larger than the original. The Arnolfini portrait. If you think this is a straightforward wedding portrait of a wealthy Flemish merchant and his wife, you're wrong on almost every detail. The man, Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini, was documented to be in Bruges on the date the painting was made. Historical records place him there, not in the room. The woman's posture, which has been interpreted for centuries as a sign of pregnancy, is not. She is simply holding her dress in the fashion of the time. None of that is the most important detail. Look at the convex mirror on the back wall. Reflected inside it are 2 additional figures standing in the doorway of the room, people who do not appear anywhere else in the painting. One of them is believed to be Jan van Eyck himself, the artist. Directly above the mirror, written in elaborate Gothic script on the wall, is the inscription Johannes de Eyck fuit hix, which translates as Jan van Eyck was here, not painted this, not made this, was here. He signed the painting as a legal witness, not as an artist. The mirror, the reflection, and the inscription together constitute what may be the earliest known artist's self-portrait embedded as a legal document in the history of Western painting. Nighthawks. Edward Hopper painted this in January 1942, 6 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor. If you think it is simply a moody late-night diner scene, look at the architecture. There is no entrance or exit visible anywhere in the painting. The diner has no door. The 4 people inside, 3 customers and a server, have no way in or out that the viewer can see. They are sealed inside the light. The street outside is completely empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no signs of any other human life in any direction. Hopper based the painting on a diner near his apartment in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. He said he simplified it greatly. In reality, the diner had a door and the street had traffic. He removed both deliberately. He lived 2 blocks from the diner. He painted it from memory without going inside. New York City was operating under voluntary nighttime blackout conditions at the time to reduce visibility from potential enemy aircraft. Hopper never mentioned the war in any interview about the painting. He said he was painting the loneliness of a large city. He finished it in 3 weeks. It sold immediately upon exhibition for $3,000. He considered it one of his least interesting works. The Gross Clinic. Thomas Eakins painted this in 1875 as a document of Dr. Samuel Gross performing surgery on a patient's thigh, surrounded by medical students. If you think it is straightforward medical realism, you are wrong on at least 3 counts. First, infrared and X-ray analysis confirmed that Eakins embedded himself in the painting. He is the small, shadowed figure in the upper right of the amphitheater audience, watching. He did not identify himself. He simply placed himself in the room and said nothing. Second, the figure in the lower left, crouching and covering her face, the only person in the painting physically unable to watch, was added as a deliberate device. Eakins stated in correspondence that she was designed to give viewers permission to look away because he knew the image was difficult. He built an emotional exit into the painting and then painted himself watching from the audience without using it. Third, the painting was rejected from the fine art section of the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition on the grounds that it was too graphic. It was displayed in the medical equipment annex cataloged alongside surgical instruments. It is now held jointly by the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, considered among the most significant works of 19th century American painting. It was classified as medical apparatus for the first decade of its public existence. The Birth of Venus. Botticelli completed this painting between 1484 and 1486. If you think it is a straightforward celebration of classical mythology and feminine beauty, you are missing who is standing at the center of it. The woman who modeled for Venus was Simonetta Vespucci. She had been dead for 8 years when Botticelli painted her. Simonetta was the acknowledged mistress of Giuliano de' Medici, the younger brother of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Giuliano was assassinated in the Pazzi conspiracy on April 26, 1478, stabbed 19 times inside Florence Cathedral during High Mass. His killers were members of the rival Pazzi banking family, acting with the tacit approval of Pope Sixtus IV. Simonetta never lived to see the assassination. She had already died 2 years before that, in 1476, at the age of 22 or 23, from tuberculosis. She was publicly mourned in Florence. Her funeral procession passed through the streets with her face uncovered, which was unusual and considered a mark of exceptional public grief. Botticelli was present for that procession. He painted her face from memory, or from earlier studies, 8 years after her death, for a commission from the Medici family. There is no surviving contemporary account of why he chose her specifically for Venus, or whether the Medici requested it. What is documented is what Botticelli left behind when he died in 1510. He left instructions that he was to be buried at the feet of Simonetta Vespucci in the church of Ognissanti in Florence. His request was honored. They have been in the same building for over 500 years. The painting that made her face the most recognized female image in Renaissance art was completed by a man who arranged 24 years in advance to spend eternity at her feet. In Bed, The Kiss. Toulouse-Lautrec painted this in 1892. Both figures are women. If you think this is a minor curiosity from a provocative artist, you are wrong about the stakes. In 1892, depicting lesbian physical intimacy in a work of visual art was a criminal offense in France under public decency statutes. Not controversial, not frowned upon, criminal. Lautrec painted it anyway, and then never showed it publicly during his lifetime. He spent extended periods living inside the brothels of Montmartre, not as a client, but as a resident. The women knew him, tolerated him, and largely ignored him, which is what allowed him to paint them as they actually were. He documented them eating breakfast, getting dressed, undergoing the mandatory medical examinations required by French law to work legally as prostitutes, and sleeping. He described them in his own words as the only free people in Paris because they had already been excluded from every social performance performance that everyone else was still required to maintain. He made approximately 50 paintings of these women across a decade. He kept the most intimate ones in private circulation, shown only to specific people he trusted. He never attempted to exhibit them, never priced them for sale, never included them in any public catalog of his work. When he died in 1901 at 36 years old from the combined effects of syphilis and alcoholism, he left no instructions about what should happen to them. His mother, the Countess Adèle de Toulouse-Lautrec, took control of his entire estate. She preserved everything without destruction or censorship. In bed, the kiss was not shown publicly until after both Lautrec and his mother were dead. It eventually sold at Sotheby's London in 2015 for £10.7 million. The painting that could have sent its maker to prison is now one of the most valuable works of post-impressionism ever sold at auction. If you want more like this, subscribe and tell me which painting you think is hiding something nobody's found yet.